Welcome back to the Literary Crack Podcast. This is part 2 of our top 10 fantasy series of all time. Enjoy.
Up next for me at number 5, it is The Wandering Inn by Pirate Abba. I'm enjoying it a lot. I'm having a lot of fun reading it. I'm only on volume 3. I hear very strongly that it will continue to rise up my list as I read it. I get messages from Justin every 2 to 3 weeks in our Venom chat group that are like, well, I was late again. I was crying because reading The Wandering Inn because it's so damn good. So I feel like eventually, and I haven't even gotten to like the first moment of that yet. So
Nope.
I'm sure it's gonna keep climbing, but I don't even know what to say about it. It's just I'm gonna save that because I know it's gonna be on your list, and I can guess where it'll be.
Fair enough.
So we'll just keep going for now.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Number 5 for me is The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. Now,
Nice.
as opposed to Rhaenyra in The Cosmere, I am only putting this series on
Right.
as number 5.
Of Blood and Bone.
don't
is
think-
out.
It was, book 1's not bad, book 2's good, book 3 I wish there's no way we could have known to record this conversation, but we were having this like spoiler deep dive conversation just on the phone about book 3, and we were talking about like what we didn't like, and like we were trying to decide how we felt about it, and by the end of the conversation, Shannon and I were like, I think I like this book less than I thought I did when we started it.
Yes. It's true. One of the few times it's ever happened. We realize how much we dislike something.
Yeah, it didn't hold up for me. But The Faithful and the Fallen as a series is really good. I love the angels and demons conflicts. I love this, kind of what he does with the Chosen One trope. I think it's a lot of fun.
Yep.
I'm sure Shane will say more, but the fight scenes are incredible.
They're so good. You don't know who will win
You don't. You
I
never
really
know.
love that
And
about that one.
it's just so good. It's definitely. I understand why people don't like it, but some people are like, oh, it's too tropey, or they just run all the time, and I'm like, I don't care. It's a really fun read, and it's got talking animals. So what more do you want?
True.
Like, it's great.
That's so true. The only reason that The Faithful and the Fallen didn't make my top 10, the only reason it was like number 6 or not on the list at all. And the
Fair
reason
enough.
it didn't make it was I decided that I really didn't like the author does this. He utilizes this trope with villains that just drives me crazy. Where like
Or they're like plot
I-
armored.
Yeah, well, not sort of, but like it goes even further than that. Like they he does the fake killing thing. Like
Oh
I
yeah.
won't tell you who or how or when, but like I hate it when authors will pretend to kill a villain and you think they're dead and they're not dead. Like that's just so dumb. This is just needless. No one needs that anymore. It's already been done
Yeah.
enough. We don't want that.
It's a downside for sure. A lot of people complain. That's the people's biggest complaint. Like the villains just get away all the time, and like they know we
Yeah.
can ever kill them. And I in one sense, I liked it because it just made me hate them so much. Like book 4, I was like, I hate these people. Like I just want them to die. But yeah, he does use a lot of kind of cheap tricks to get you.
Well, and they're
there,
not even
so.
realistic. Is the thing like when you think they're
Yeah,
dead?
that's true.
Your people have the opportunity to make sure they're dead, and they're like, I'm sure it's fine.
They just run
it's
off.
cool.
Yeah.
And they just screw off. Like, really, people?
Yeah.
So-
That's a downside for sure.
Yeah. But it's so good. Honestly, I love the plot twists in that book are so good. They're great.
Mm-hmm.
Number 4 for me, luckily, a book with no fake deaths to speak of. The Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. I did not do the Cosmere cheating, mostly because I haven't read enough of it.
That's the only thing you've read.
I've read Elantris and
Besides
Warbreaker.
Warbreaker and Elantris.
I haven't
Yeah,
read
that's it.
Stormlight or any of the other standalones. I actually don't intend to read the other standalones. I probably won't do that.
You gotta read Tress of the Emerald Sea, man. It's so good.
Oh yeah, I should read that. That's true.
That's a good one.
And I've heard such good things about Stormlight. I'm really excited to pick that up later this year. have to find a stopping point in the Wandering Inn first. But I know. So the thing about Mistborn for me is I'll talk about the thing that I don't like so much about it first, which is particularly in the first trilogy, I'm not a big fan of how the characters are written, or at least a couple of the characters. I don't like how Vin is written particularly. But the plot itself is so interesting, and how the series scales is so interesting. And things happen with characters that you would never expect all the way through. And it's, you know, I've read it twice now. Once when I was 15, and then read it more recently with my wife. And on the reread, now that I'm coherent, it was so interesting. And all the parts that I didn't enjoy the first time through, I really enjoyed on the second time on the reread. And the funny part about that is, not even because it was a reread and I already knew what was going to happen. I remembered some of the high level stuff, but like the big reveal at the end of book 3, I didn't even remember it. Justin made fun of me for like 20 minutes.
He forgot who the hero of ages was.
I know.
I just can't even.
I know. All right.
I forget details, but that's a level.
That's a big detail. I love the second series too. Wayne is one of my favorite characters that Brandon Sanderson has ever written. I think that's his best character work, actually, and is the second series of Mistborn. People who have read Stormlight have agreed that second Mistborn Era 2 is his best character writing. I really enjoyed it, so it was fun. I'm still not sure how to feel about how it scales between like books 6 and book 7, but you know, that's all in due time. We've got Era 3 coming, so we'll see what happens.
We'll see. Yeah, I definitely liked Mistborn. I also reread Mistborn with my wife who had never read it, and it was much better. Although my wife bailed out of Era 2 because she doesn't like Westerns, and she was like, I skipped this whole thing. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, oh well.
This is the last book. Number 4 on your list is the only one I don't know what it'll be. The top 3 I know.
Yeah, you definitely know. Okay, I'm guessing you know number 4. Number 4 is the Lycanius trilogy.
There
James
it is.
Islington. I forgot. There it is.
You hinted it. I forgot. I should have known that.
You did. I have this one up high because so I heard a complaint about it recently, and someone said it's like James Islington tried to do in a trilogy, but it took Wheel of Time 14 books to do. And my response to that was, yes, and he did it perfectly. Like, I don't know what else you want.
Yep.
He didn't drag it on. It just went, and it happened, and it worked.
So well.
The part that I really enjoy about this is there's a really... and it just makes it so rereadable because you almost don't get enough of it. You need to go back. Like, I need to go back and just absorb it again. There's a really cool like philosophical discussion between like what does it mean to have free will, and what does it mean to have free will if there's a God that knows the future? Is it possible to have free will, or is it just slavery? And do you need to be freed from that? And there's so many really cool like concepts, and he does a really good job of handling them. He makes both sides seem very understandable, very easy to understand where they're coming from. And Caden is an incredible character. It's one of the most unique fantasy characters I've ever read. It's just a really cool idea with what he did there. And it also messes with time. And I just didn't expect it to mess with time. I try not to tell people in what way it does because it doesn't tell you in the blurb. And to be honest, if I had known what it was going to do, I wouldn't have read it. But it surprised me with what it did with time. And I'm glad I didn't know because it was fantastic. So,
the best,
super good and
temporal train wreck I've ever read. It's so good.
Yes, and also just it really deals with truth a lot. You know, how do you know what's true, and how do you know who's right, and how do you figure these things out, and like how are you supposed to act not knowing these things, and it's just really interesting about perspectives, and I really like it a lot. The characters, in terms of outside of Caden, I think the characters are kind of typical outside of Caden, but Caden makes up for all that for me. I've just really liked him a lot.
I think so. And it's one of those series that I really enjoy because for the first little bit, you don't know whose side you're on. It takes a while to figure out whose side you're on and who you like, and who you should like, and why you like
Yep.
people that maybe you shouldn't like. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Which is a great segue to my number 4. You don't know what it is. You know what my number 3. I got an extra one. And you know my top 2, but I don't think you know what my third one is. If you had to guess, what would be my number 3?
I don't know. I'm racking my brain. It's not Wheel of Time, which surprised me.
It's not Game of Thrones.
I don't know. I have no idea.
It's not Riley Adamson. It is the Rhaenyra Revelations and Chronicles.
Oh my gosh!
Michael J.
But only
Sullivan.
Revelations, not the rest of them.
Revelations
Is that right?
and Chronicles. Revelations.
Okay,
and
Revelation
Chronicles.
Chronicles. Okay,
Yeah, I think those are closely enough related that it's fair to combine.
that's fine. Yeah, you can do that. For sure. Yeah.
I think it's such a great entry point into fantasy. I can recommend that series to anyone. And from book 1 of Revelations, which is what I would always, I don't know. If you really want to have fun with it, you can like start with book 1 of Chronicles, and then do book 1 of Revelations, and then read the Chronicles, and then read the Revelations. But people don't like my fancy reading order. So if you just start with book 1 of Revelations, it's a great entry point into this like epic fantasy genre. You don't really know who to trust when you get into it. You don't know whose forces are with you and whose aren't with you. Trying to the premise of the mystery that you're set up with is really interesting. Also, the characters that you're given, Royce and Hadrian, as like your main characters, are just so much fun. And then as the series scales, like the plot twists, the character development, the raw emotion that comes out of those characters, especially in the graphic audio adaptation. I reread the series in graphic audio.
Yes.
Almost probably 8 or 9 years after I first read it in text, and man, it's just so powerful. So I enjoy it so much because it's so recommendable, and because it's a great all-around series. And I can pretty confidently say if you don't like Rhaenyra, then I'm going to struggle to know which like epic fantasy to recommend to you after that. If you don't like Rhaenyra, you're probably not a fantasy person, or a modern
Maybe not.
fantasy person.
Not that kind of fantasy. Not like the quest. It is
medieval
very much
stuff.
like a quest, like heist quest kind of thing. And if you don't like
that's
that, yeah, it's not going to work for you.
Nope.
I will say, as a side note, the graphic audio of Rhaenyra, I think, is the best graphic audio production. For me, it is
Ever? Or just in the modern
ever.
ones?
No, well,
Ever.
I think maybe ever. I think the acting
Wow.
is fantastic. I think the sound
agree.
design is subtle but great.
Yep.
I think the music blends perfectly, where I don't feel like I'm listening to the same song every 5 minutes, which, as much as I
do
love
hear that
Johan,
difference.
he doesn't do great at that. Or Nathaniel Perry, they both have that
That's
problem.
true.
I think whoever did Rhaenyra did a good job with that, so I
Absolutely.
really love it.
I definitely think it's their best modern production. But then again, when I think about the older, like the classics, it's hard for me to say like, well, I think this one was probably better. I don't know. I think
Yeah,
I think
no, it is
I think if you take like the first 3 of Lightbringer, I would say it's better.
Oh yeah.
But all right, I know what your next one is.
I don't know if this will be a transition for you or not, so it'll be interesting. Number 3 is the Parahumans Universe by Walpo. So Worm and
Yeah.
Ward. They're just so good. If you don't like
my
superhero
gosh.
fiction, you will like this. It is the best take on the superhero genre I've ever seen, read, anything.
Absolutely.
It outclasses Marvel and DC by 10 miles. And it's just
Like 50
incredible.
miles.
It's incredibly creative. It starts out as a web serial. It's not even published. He still hasn't published a single book of it.
Yep.
Because he just doesn't want to. So fine. And
It's
it's
that good that
it's
it's fine.
incredible. Yeah,
Yep.
it's
There are audio versions if you're an audio person. The Worm unabridged audiobook is the one I hear is the one to read. But also
yeah. There are a lot of
Parahumans.wordpress.com.
the Worm audiobook project. There's a few. Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
few floating out there, and that's how you know it's great because fans were like, "We need audiobook
There are
versions."
3
And like,
audiobooks.
yep,
3 audiobook versions just completely made for free by volunteers who love the series so much. This series is crazy. This is my number 2. It's such a good segue.
Yes.
The number one thing that gets me about Worm is... that's hard to say. There's too many good things. There's too many things. It's the way that it scales from a small local problem to a big ass local problem to a Jesus Harold Christ local problem to a national problem, and then you have intercontinental issues, and then you have a global, like, the way that it scales makes so much sense. It's so natural, the flow of events, but it's riveting. It's, again, you can't look away from it. Worm is 1.7 million words, and I finished it in about a month.
Yep.
Because it was so interesting. We know people who finished it in a week because it was so interesting. The characters as well. Your main character's name is Taylor, and she does some crazy stuff. And one thing I love a lot is how the author can make the most crazy, erratic decisions seem reasonable because you're in the first person. You're in the head of Taylor while she's observing and making choices. And so I don't even realize how crazy Taylor can look to other people until you see her from other people's perspective. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Didn't even cross my mind. The villains are so interesting. The power set, it's not your average tropey, like, super strength and invincibility and they can fly, and like you have some of those things, but they're combined in such unique ways. I couldn't recommend this thing highly enough. It's so much fun.
Yeah. No, it's an incredible read. I always describe it as like you start rolling down a mountain and you just get faster and faster and faster until you're like going at breakneck speed, and at the end of it you just kind of die. You just fall and break your neck, and that's the end of Worm. And like it's a breakneck paced book.
Yeah.
And it just gets you there, and
It's true.
It's got horror elements as well. Some really creepy stuff. Creepy stuff.
Oh yeah.
They're really good. And Ward is its sequel, and I think Ward I'm not as big of a fan of the plot of. I do love the plot. I just don't love it as much as Worm. It doesn't have that same pace, which is fine. It does have better characters. Ward's characters are fantastic and
So good.
really heart-wrenching, and they're emotionally, they're just traumatized people. I mean, everyone in Parahumans is traumatized, but it's
By definition.
Yeah, but in Ward, it's very much more like you're just kind of in their heads and really seeing what they're going through, and really feeling for them. And Ward is more of a character story about how do these traumatized people even survive this like crazy situation that they've been put in, and how do they grow as humans, as parahumans, in this whole thing. And it's just so good. And Ward's like 2 million words long, so it's a little shorter than Wheel of Time, and it's worth your time.
Absolutely. I completely agree. All right. Number 2
is The Wandering Inn by Pirate
Yeah.
Alba. I won't gush about this. I will say Shane's on volume 3. He's like a couple million words in. Maybe I think you're around 3 million.
Really? Wow, I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah, you're doing pretty well. Well, I guess by the end of this one, you'll get to like 3.1 million or something.
Okay.
I
Out of
am
13.
toward. I'm somewhere at the beginning of volume 8. So I'm about 8 million words in total. And it just gets so much better. Everything gets. I just don't know where the story is going. I lose track of the story. I'm like, what are we doing? And then I think I get it. And then she just wrecks my life again. So it's crazy. I laugh all the time while reading it. I have sobbed once. I've definitely cried at least twice.
Twice? There are 2 messages.
Yeah, and I've wept tears of joy a different time, which is different from crying. Cause
Oh, that's different.
So
Okay,
crazy.
that's the second time. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, and
Which
I
is
just
great, by
have
the
no
way.
words.
If a book can make you cry, that's a magical thing. I want to shout out Demon Wars saga for this. One of the closest
yeah.
times I've ever come to crying. And let me be clear, I'm not the kind of like, I'm a man, I don't cry. Like, that's stupid. It's just a testament, because crying isn't something that I do naturally. It's not a natural way that I process. It's a testament to how good a book is when it can make me cry, and that's something that
Yeah.
the first end of the first book of Demon Wars pulled off, and that I'm really excited for The Wandering Inn, because Justin said that, because you're similar. I feel like you don't cry super.
Yeah, no, very similar. We
Yeah.
don't really cry when we read very hardly
Yeah.
at all. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's and for those that don't know, this is also a web serial. It's the longest running web serial ever made. It's still ongoing. We're on volume 10 now. We're at 13 million words and counting. It sounds like a lot, but there are slow sections for sure. There are less slow sections in Wheel of Time in terms of percentage. I will say that. But there are slow parts. There are parts that certain chapters, certain perspective fans like more than others. But what's unique about it is everyone has different tastes for the ones that they like and the ones they don't. It's really interesting to see that. And it's basically what happens if you throw a bunch of characters of Earth. Like, you just throw them into random parts of the world, and what effect does that have on the world itself is kind of what the story, as like an overarching thing, explores. But then also like what happens to those characters and the people that they interact with and things like that. So it has an overarching plot, but it also has very strong characters. They're so strong the author doesn't even use dialogue tags, because most of the time you just know who's speaking, and she's very good at like prompting you, and it might be a little bit more difficult. And I just never seen that done either. So she started writing it in 2016, and it's now 2024. So
Whoa.
it's an Audible now. You can read that. There's ebook versions. The ebooks and audiobooks aren't caught up, but yeah, I mean, I cannot recommend this. It'll be like nothing you've read before, most likely.
She started in 2016. That is mind-blowing. We're 8 years.
Yeah.
That's incredible. How
Yeah.
much. And the chapters are so long that she releases.
Yeah.
And
She-
the thing is, I've always said, when I finish a really, really good series, I think we have the quality covered. I wish there was more to read. Like, I want to spend more time with these characters. I want to spend more time with this world, and either in the aftermath or before or in the middle. Like, there's just somewhere where I'm like, man, I really want to spend even more time with these characters, because they're my friends, and I don't want to. I'm not ready to leave them. And I was thinking about this earlier while I was having lunch, and I was reading The Wandering Inn. We are so lucky. Like, we are so incredibly fortunate that we have an author of this caliber. First of all, like, holy crap, what a phenomenal author, with this vision for the world and for these characters, who wants to write. I mean, some people are saying that we're not even, like, that we're a third of the way through at 13 million words.
Who knows?
Like, if we're spending, like, I can't. There are some series that I've really enjoyed. We've talked about a lot of them today, but to spend this much time in a world is making me appreciate, like, those other series, for the length that they are and, like, the discretion that the authors used, but also this one even more because of how much time we get to spend, and how much we get to continue enjoying it, basically for the next 35 years. So let's do it.
Yeah, I really decided to, I don't know if she'll stick the landing. I have no idea. I know that's a really monumental task, and I know it's the biggest problem of any fantasy series is the ending. The ending is always the hardest part for fantasy in particular. And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if she'll stick it. I have a lot of confidence. But what I do know is that, like, I cannot take back the countless hours of enjoyment that I've had. And this will be a series that, like, even if the landing doesn't stick as well as I'd like, I'm still going to recommend it because it just has all the things that I would want. And I think it's just such an incredible journey. And it's just worth it just for just the experience of reading it. And I don't feel this way about like any other series. If the ending goes wrong, I just generally don't recommend it. But this one, I really think I will, unless she just completely throws out the whole thing. But I highly doubt that. I just, maybe there'll
Do you
be
think
some
just
issues,
notes?
but
Like just in case, like God forbid, but if she gets
I was just
hit
thinking
by a
about
bus
today. I was like, what
tomorrow,
if she dies? Yeah,
have
I was like,
notes?
shoot.
Does she have like a secret pact with Patrick Rothfuss to finish the Wandering in case something happens? What are we gonna do? Oh
I
my
don't know. I mean, no one even know who's. I mean, some people know who she is, but like that's not even her real name, and we don't know. The general public doesn't know who her real name is.
Really?
So.
Her real
I don't
name
know.
is
I know she
Pirate
has.
Abba? Who would have thought?
Yeah, I know it's a shock, right? I know.
I finally got
yeah.
to see
But-
pirates, by the way. That was fun. Finally reading about pirates
Oh, they-
a little bit. Yeah, this is fun. We
Yeah,
fought some
I know,
pirates
it's-
today.
Yes, it's a good book. I really.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what's gonna happen. I know she has an outline, and I mean, she's young, luckily, but yeah, hopefully she doesn't like die in a car wreck or a plane crash or something crazy, and
Is she like our
she can
age?
finish this thing. Let's see, when what was it, like 2021? She turned 30.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're all right.
she's
She said she'll
She's
be
also-
done with
that's
this by the
incredibly
time
young.
She's 70. She said.
yeah, exactly.
So.
That's incredibly young for an author, by the way, to start and be successful, and to like start a successful series at age 23. I don't know of anyone else. I'm sure there are people, but it's very rare
25.
for that to happen.
25, right?
Huh?
She turned 30 in 2021, right?
Oh, yeah, you're right. 25.
Ooh, that
would
means
be-
if I start now, I could beat her. Let's go.
There you go.
It's on.
There you go.
Now,
Yeah.
what do I
So
write
anyway,
about?
I won't gush about it. You should read it. It's not talked enough about. I've only seen it
agree.
in one other top 10 fantasy series list or fiction series list.
Wow.
So I'm happy to put it out there. It's
Absolutely.
incredible. It's won 3 of the best fantasy web serial awards on the fantasy subreddit 3 years in a row. I mean, not 3 years in a row, but 3 times. So now it's ineligible for nominations because it won 3 times.
Nice.
So that tells you something too. It's just really good. Number 1 is the one we agree on
Number 1.
universally,
Absolutely. Go ahead.
and that is the Lightbringer series by Brent Weeks. Is
Yeah.
our top.
Yep.
Our top series. I'll just say this. For a lot of people, it's not number 1 because it's the ending. A lot of people don't like the ending, and it's a controversial ending. I think the ending's thematically appropriate for what the series is. Whether you saw those themes before we got to the ending, that's a different discussion. But I think if you take the time to go back and read it, I think it thematically makes sense for what it was doing. It doesn't mean you have to like it. But I think it thematically makes sense. I mean, the battles are one thing, but the actual like what happens overall, I think it thematically makes sense.
Yeah.
The reason
We had this
why
debate.
we did the reason why this will be my number 1 is just the way I read it, the timing that I read it. I was 15 when Kip was 15 in both of those books. Kip turned 16 in book 3. I was 16. And then didn't quite age with him perfectly after that, but I felt also like in books 4 and 5 I was learning a lot of the same lessons at the same time that Kip was in those books, and that makes it very special for me. And there's so much good theology, good spiritual symbolism in these books, a lot of really wise sayings and proverbs and stuff from characters like the White,
yeah.
and
The quotes.
from
Man.
different things from Orholam the prophet. And I really appreciate this series. The magic system is fantastic. I still think it's a great magic system. Again, I know a lot of people say no, it's not because of the ending, but I think it still thematically lines up with what the magic system was. So it doesn't bother me. But I understand that's an issue. But I think it's ambitious, and I just have a lot of respect for it. And the graphic audio productions, with the exception of book 5, are great. And it's not entirely book 5's fault. It's just the timing that it came out and all kinds of reasons why the graphic audio has an issue. But
I love the pandemic.
exactly. But those books are just super special. They're one of my like first fantasy series as well. I think it might have been like one of the first 10 I read for sure. So Lightbringer always have that significance for me. I've reread it so many times over and over again, and yeah, I just love it, and I will die on the hill that it's a good series and defend it to the last.
Absolutely. It's the establishment, the plot twists, the magic system, absolutely the graphic audio production. The ending is really audacious. It's a daring thing to do, especially when you set up the series the way that you did and brought in the audience that you did to end a series the way that Brent Weeks did it. And I, it took me a while to come to grips with that ending. I still don't like how the battles were done. I think the battles could have been done better. There could have been more intensity.
Sure, yeah.
But, I mean, all told, what a ride. Oh my goodness. I read that series. This series is really unique for me in the way that I read it as well. First of all, it's the only series that I've read with Justin, in part. I read the first couple books with Justin.
That's true.
That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that a lot. Justin, we should read The Wandering Inn together. Let's start over.
Oh my
Let's
goodness.
do it. Every word.
Every word.
And that was a lot of fun to just like. I don't read with friends very much, and I can't remember the last time I've done it. Actually, the last time I've done it might have been the Demon Cycle. I think
that was.
I think so, but otherwise, I think the only other thing I've read with friends is Lightbringer, and that is an experience I would love to have again, just because of how much fun it was. Just set the tone for me, and being able to react and talk to Justin about stuff and be like, I think this is going to happen, and he already read the book, so he could make fun of me because he already knew what was going to happen. And did I mention the plot twist? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was so good.
Then, I finished the series with my wife. We read the books 4 and 5 together for the first time. But even book 3, like reading it as it was coming out in graphic audio and having those times to like come together and react. I was so addicted to that series. It was so riveting that I was reading it in class. I asked my teacher. I was like, "This book is really, really good. I just want to let you know that if whatever you're teaching today, if it loses me for a second, I'm gonna put my headphones in and read my book, and I hope that's okay. Because if not, I really have to go to the bathroom for about an hour and a half." And she was like, "You know what? It's that good. Just go ahead and read it." I was like, "Yeah."
Yes.
So, Lightbringer is just really special to me for timing, but also it holds up so well. It's so relevant. I think it'll be relevant for a very long time, just from the quotes and the advice and just all of the things that come out of it. I feel like Lightbringer is something that you finish reading and you take it with you. There are pieces of it that you take with you that change the way that you look at the world, or change the way that you look at politics, or change the way that you look at religion, or how people interact with each other. There's something that you'll take with you from Lightbringer when you leave, and that's hard to find. So that's number one.
And I will say it did take me about a year to really come to grips with the ending, and I realized when I went through that whole process of like really thinking about it, because I wanted to love it, so I just kept thinking about it over and over again, and I realized the reason I didn't like it were like personal reasons. It was issues with like how I thought things should work, and like my sense of like fairness and like what was right and what wasn't, but like it wasn't. I think the ending actually reflects a lot of like truth and a lot of things that were hard for me to accept because of the implications that it had for my own life, and that made it really difficult. And I think some of the reactions I've seen online, they're not all to do with that. They may not even mostly be to do with that, but I think some of the reactions against it are really just connected with people in a place that's very sensitive, and it just is gonna cause you to react one way or another. So it's a great book, and if you ever want to talk about Lightbringer, just call us up. We will talk about it for hours on end.
It's true. We will, I'm sure, on this
but
show.
not today.
Not today. Please react in the comments. Let us know what we got wrong, what we got right, what's your top 10. Want to hear all that jazz. You knew I was going to say that. It's a trope at the end of podcasts to say things.
Absolutely.
Say these things. We're looking forward to it. We'll be giving you more weekly updates. We'll be giving you segments. We have all kinds of crazy stuff planned, so don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. This is your dose of literary crack.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Literary Crack. As always, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at LiteraryCrackPD, and you can send us an email to literarycrackpodcast@gmail.com. See you next time!